Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this ATR exclusive. Now, guys, you guys know one of the things I talk very highly about is women's wrestling. I feel like I'm one of maybe a few podcasts out there that praise women's wrestling. I will give them their flowers. Sometimes, honestly, the women wrestlers put on much better shows than the men. I'm just going to say that. Now, guys, our guest this evening is somebody who I guess you could say she's sort of international. But she has worked with several companies in New York, including the Dynasty. And I'm actually about to say this on the show, VPW. See, guys, I do talk about companies on Long Island. The one, the only, Nahir Robles joins us tonight. Nahir, how you doing tonight?
Hola, hola. First of all, I'm very excited to be here. I'm like, it's weird. Like, this is actually first time I've done like an interview in English with the title, the Warrior Breed Wrestling title. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd be able to like have this little moment like in such like short time. But I'm very excited to be here, and I'm excited to be here tonight with you.
I was very intrigued because of the fact also, and I want to kind of start off with this, because you were born in Puerto Rico, correct?
Born and raised. I live in Puerto Rico.
Now, obviously, we saw it a couple of months ago when I forgot what I think last year's Backlash. How is the crowd different in Puerto Rico compared to the States?
So it's funny. Like I'm a tell the sad story about Backlash. Mm-hmm. When Backlash happened that weekend, I wasn't in the island. I wasn't on the island. I was actually in Florida. Because I was trying to get some matches in, to get more experience. And Florida tends to be really big on like opportunities. Like to me, Florida's like Puerto Rico 2.0. So I had already like asked for like vacation time to go be there for like a week or two. And I already bought the ticket, and then boom, Backlash, the Backlash announcement happens. And I'm freaking out and I'm sad because that was the moment I had to choose between, my career or like being there as a fan, which made me cry so much. But I've been a couple of live shows in Puerto Rico. But I'm pretty sure, like, you guys know the crowd reactions, like the same thing you guys saw there. We get that same kind of crazy like on our shows. Like, we're loud. We're Puerto Rican. We're loud. So be like. That being such an important event of WWE being there in Puerto Rico, even though like it's a smaller stage because the Coliseum's not that big, the Choliseo isn't really that big in comparison to other places, but what it made up for size, it made up because of the feelings that the people were like receiving from their TV. Because Puerto Ricans can make you feel things, that's for sure. Yeah. And in comparison to the state, that sometimes, which happens, it's fine. I feel it's a cultural thing. United States tend to be a little bit more quiet. They're more narrowed down. They're just enjoying the show at their own terms. Well, Puerto Ricans be like, "Wah!" Somebody hits you, "Wah!" Hey, wah! That's so. And you guys could hear that in the Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest match.
Well, the other thing also is there's a lot of, and I could be wrong on this, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there's a lot of people, from Puerto Rico who for a while felt like that pro wrestling was real.
What do you mean?
That when you look at, and I could be totally wrong on this, but there was a wrestler we had on a while back, HBO, High Voltage Omar. Mm-hmm. He also, I think, is from Puerto Rico. He's done shows in Puerto Rico. And he said, that, him growing up, a lot of where he was, a lot of the people felt like pro wrestling was real. Like they didn't think of it as a sports entertainment. Like we know of it as.
I don't think to Puerto Ricans wrestling, I feel like now they're more self-aware, but like for the longest time, like, you were really like, if you saw like in Puerto Rican culture, if you saw two wrestlers hating each other on TV, it felt so real to them. So they really thought it was like that in real life. Again, they're very passionate And I feel like, again, that's a cultural thing, and I'm just gonna blame telenovelas on it. We get this gutsy, heart wrenching feeling from telenovelas, and we also get that from wrestling. So I feel like I'm just gonna blame it on the TV and the cultural aspects on Latino culture with spectacles. They feel like they're real. Like you'll see an actress that always plays a telenovela villain. Let me think of one that's like on the top of my hand. Angelique Boyer. She's from Mexico. She plays the best heel, like, villain characters. You like people just assume she's B word in real life, and then they see her interviews as herself, and they're like, what? They really think she's the character. And there's a lot of like actors like that people just, because they're Latino, they're like, they're mean. They're like that in real life, or vice versa. They think the sweet girls, the good old martyr female characters, like super nice, and then boom, she ends up being a diva. Because life's like that. But like they don't know that because that's what they're used to seeing. They're seeing the same people playing the same kind of characters all the time. So they presume this girl's a horrible person in real life. She's always, and then boom, life. So it's kind of like a shock when when Puerto Ricans started treating wrestling more as a sports entertainment rather than part of like the life of a telenovela.
No, that I've heard in my 10 years since I came back to watch pro wrestling, I've heard the comparison for years that wrestling is in essence a soap opera. Let's call it what it is.
Soap opera. And Glow actually made that comparison when the Netflix TV show appeared.
Yeah.
Liberty Bell was having a hard time. Her character was a former actress, blah, blah, blah. She was having a hard time understanding the wrestling psychology. And I think it's episode 2 or 3, they take her to a wrestling show where one of the other girls explains to her the psychology of the show. And then she goes, oh, this is a soap opera. And then she understood everything.
I've said it for years. I mean, my mom is a huge General Hospital fan. She's been a General Hospital fan for years. And like, I'll be at the kitchen table and my parents will be sitting there dissecting an episode. I look at them, I go, so you guys, it's okay for you guys to dissect an episode, but if I talk wrestling, I'm the one who's crazy, yet you guys are doing the exact same thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Every time I talk pro wrestling.
It's different. It's different. And you're like, no, it's not. How dare they?
I'm like, and the funny thing is though, everybody's like, yeah, but the only difference is, I'm like, there's no difference between the two when you think about it. I mean, realistically, yes, the only big difference is you're not seeing men in spandex and boots on, General Hospital or One Life to Live.
I was gonna say, like, the best difference, I don't know if you remember, like, at least in telenovelas that I remember as a kid, there's always a scene where the woman, the female antagonist always has a scene where she kind of throws someone off the stairs or whatever. And I'd say you don't see that in wrestling, but you know what you do? You do too.
Yeah, that's probably, no, that's a great way to put it. But I want to kind of dive in, into the Nahir Robles, you as a wrestler, because I mean, we could sit here for hours and talk about.
Oh, for sure. I told you I talk too much.
It's all good. But what got you into wanting to become a pro wrestler? What made you sit there and go, I want to get into this crazy sport?
So the thing is, like, I guess many of my peers, I will like go on camera and say, I've always been a fan, like ever since I was a kid, my cousins, when I was a child, that was what got me through everything. I'd be the girl with the the TV 14 magazines. In Puerto Rico, they had La Revista Tu, which is like the Mexican version of TV 14, where you got the hot goss. But I'd also have the WWE magazines. I was that girl. I got the best of both worlds. And I've always been a fan. I went to a couple of shows when I was a teenager. As an adult, I went, and a couple of years ago, back in 2019, October 2019, WWE did a live show here in Puerto Rico, and I had nobody to come with me. So I actually went to the show by myself. I didn't care. And I remember posting the picture. And somebody I knew back from where I used to model He writes to me, "Why don't you ever go to the shows in Puerto Rico?" And I go up and I literally I'll even look at the conversation. I can even send you the whole conversation because it was on the picture. It was a comment by comment.
Yeah.
I write back, because I know me and I'll most likely ask somebody to train me. And he writes to me, "I know somebody," and then he writes to me via WhatsApp and sends me the number of my coach. And I'm not even joking. He says, "How about next week?" And I'm like, "I got Miami Fashion Week that weekend. How about the other one?" So 2 weeks later, after that conversation, first of all, he didn't think I was gonna go. He actually came to see my first practice. So Amaury, he's like the person responsible for me, like for sure. Like the reason why I'm here, I guess I'll always blame it on Amaury, who works for Contralona back in Puerto Rico, they're like a news outlet for wrestling.
Yeah.
He's the reason why I'm here. And then I remember when I left, and I remember like this was yesterday. I remember I am stubborn as hell. Like I am very chirpy, but I'm also very stubborn. So I remember my poor coach. I'm so sorry. I hope you'll forgive me someday. He was like, "Let's do rolls." And I look at him like with this resting bee face. And I go, "I don't do that." Legit, that was my face. And then he looks at me and he's like, "Go and roll." And I'm like, I ended up doing it, but I'll complain about it. Anything you tell me, I'll do it, but I'll complain about it. And I was so stubborn. I would question everything. And I'm like, "How do you do that? How about this? Blah, blah, blah." And then I was like, I'm very visual. I was like, I'm a science major. I'm a science, like I have a bachelor in science. I need the math. The math is not mathing. The physics is not physicking. And he was so patient with me that first day. And then I remember everybody thought she's not coming back again. And then I came back the week after. And then I came back the other week. And then they closed the school for a while, and then COVID happened. But then when they started opening, I came back and they were like, "Oh, this girl ain't quitting. She complains, but she still comes up." And then I decided that since I had the drive to come back, it didn't matter how scared I was. It was just a thing for me. Like it became my most stable relationship for the longest time. And now I'm still here.
Hey, they always say, even if you're in a place for a year or so, you ask as many questions as you can, because I mean, I'll pull back the curtain here for a second. I've been doing this show. This show I've been doing for 3 years, but I've been doing podcasting for 13 years. And I still will talk to people who've been doing this much longer than me. And I'll still ask questions, and they'll look at me and I'll be like, "Yeah, I don't want to ask this question. I have to ask this question." And the one thing I was told was, you're never going to learn if you don't ask the question. And that's stuck with me since this podcast started to pick up a little bit. But now, was there a match like on TV that you saw that made you wonder, or you're just a fan no matter what?
I loved every match, and I feel like it was the women's matches, even though they had so little time. I can't say like a specific. No, I'm lying. I have a specific match, and as an adult and learning the background of that match, it's just cooler in a way. I remember the first match that like I liked them, but like I was like on my toes. Was the hair versus hair match, Victoria versus Molly Holly.
Yeah, I remember that match.
It's when you think as a kid, like it's crazy, but now as an adult, when you know why, like the sacrifice Molly Holly made so women could have a spot, like a WrestleMania match moment. And like that was one of my favorite. It's crazy. Like I would have never like not respect to her, but like knowing the sacrifices these women made. So you'd have matches, 15-20 minute matches that the women's division has now. To me, even though it's a match, like you don't say it's like a super perfect match, but the whole sentiment to it, to me, that's what was more important. And the story was what sold me.
No, I get that. That's one thing every week on this show. The biggest thing I push, and it doesn't matter what wrestling company, it could be an independent company or it can be one of the, as I call it, one of the big boy companies, is storytelling. Because to me, if I'm a fan, and for example, great example, let's use the last Dynasty show. That was from my house. It took me about 3.5, 4 hours to get to. I went there. Yes, I'm a part of the dysfunctional Dynasty family, as I've coined it to a few of the people behind the scenes. But I was also intrigued. I was intrigued by the storytelling. And I kind of want to dive into the Dynasty stuff first before we get into the other companies that you're a part of. How did the Dynasty, come on your radar? How did that whole connection start?
So Dynasty actually has somebody from Puerto Rico that works there.
Oh,
Devon.
Go ahead.
So he and I have been like friends for a while. We're internet friends because the funny thing is when I went to Dynasty, he was in Puerto Rico. Let the record show that it was when he wrote to me, "You're in Dynasty," and I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm in Puerto Rico that weekend," and I'm like, "You why?" And I've been looking at their stuff for the longest time, and then I was just like, you know what? I love what they're doing. I'd love to work there, and I just, I'm very bold, so I just legit just wrote to them, and then from being like a one versus one women match, it ended up being such a crazy thing afterwards, and it was so cool.
I remember in the week leading up to that entire show, I had Dynasty Week on here, where I was previewing a lot of the matches. Literally, it was like a wall-to-wall week of talent and everything. And I remember every time I went to talk about that match, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what match we're going to be talking about here." I thought it was going to be a 5-on-1 match, everybody against Taylor. I thought it was going to be a gauntlet match. I'm like, I kept throwing out everything out there. I was like, it's going to be something. And I remember because I had Kristen on with me I think I had her on that Friday before the show. And I even asked her, I'm like, okay, what's this women's match going to be looking like? Is this going to be a gauntlet? 6 women? And she goes, you have to wait and see. I'm like, thanks, Kristen. Thanks.
Love that. She was like, you're going to die of like anticipation. Love that.
But I honestly, and this is why I said before about I thought you guys were had one of the biggest matches on that card because you guys told the story.
There was so much like going on in a good way. That was the night they talked about bringing a championship, and they're building a women's division, and it's like out of like there's a lot of diversity also about with the women as well, which is something that's not talked about enough. None of us looked like each other, and I genuinely love that. Like, you can't like say this one, no, we're all different, and that's perfectly fine.
And the one thing, and I'm going to give Chris Envy and Kristen both credit here. You look at independent wrestling. I've been going to independent wrestling shows now since July of 22. Was when I started going independent wrestling. With the exception of maybe one company down in Jersey called Bree Combination Wrestling that does an all-women's show.
There's actually one. There's very few. I know there were like a lot of closings, but I know it's kind of far from you because you're in Long Island. But Adrenaline Championship Wrestling back in Maryland, they have a female in-ring entertainment division. We did a show back in February, and it was an all-women show. And the thing is, I don't think anybody had like, the misconception they didn't have like the faith that like the show was we were a sold-out show. It was 5 matches, 10 women. Main event was Dia Brookside versus Brittany Blake. All like, you can't say there was one bad match because there wasn't. Like, all the matches were good.
No, and I totally could see that. I'm just, I guess with me, what I was going with,
No,
I
no,
was
no,
just
I'm not saying that in a bad thing. I feel like it's just important to like you mentioned Bree, also a company I've been staring for a while. Let's be honest. I think what they're doing is great too. Um, but mentioning like there's so few that like they have like a special place in my heart, like to put that effort into building women's wrestling. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh no, I completely get what you're saying, and you don't see a lot of companies.
No, you don't.
Have and I'm not trying to shoot on these other companies. I'm not trying to talk down on them. I understand, financially it's whatever. But when you have shows and it's we're gonna have one women's match and it's the third match on the card, but then we're gonna put it in between two championship matches, and then the crowd is dead. And I'm like, I feel sorry for the women in the ring because I'm like, the crowd was electric throughout the entire night, and then for some reason it's like, so I like with what the Dynasty is doing by building up this division, where you're going to have one, maybe two matches on the card, and I like that because it kind of brings everything to the table, so to speak. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But it's funny because it was one crazy gauntlet match with 5 women on the card. And it was insane. The reactions, like, it had everybody going.
It definitely did. I will not take that away. And like I said, I think with what the Dynasty is doing right now with their women's division is something that I give it till the end of the year, and I think more people are going to be talking about the women's division of the Dynasty because I really think they have.
I love that Dynasty's women's division is called Diamond because we're diamonds and rough, so we're just getting shaped into something great.
No, and that's the thing also, and this you really don't see in a lot of wrestling. A lot of women represented in a company like the Dynasty has. Because you see like other companies, you'll see like, we'll have one woman represented here, one here. Dynasty, you have the women's division, the GM, one of the commentators, the backstage correspondent. You don't see that a lot in independent wrestling, and I commend big time for it. But I want to transition now, away from the Dynasty here for a second and talk about a company that that a lot of people laugh at that I don't talk about enough on the show, being that I live 15 minutes away from them. And when John Radio hears this, he might actually be in shock that I'm actually talking about.
Like, you mentioned me. Oh, radio.
How did your connection to VPW happen, and how's it been working with radio?
So I did a podcast back in the beginning of 2023. I only had like 2 or 3 matches in at that time. I wasn't like going too crazy on it. They were mentioning about a couple of companies, and they ended up mentioning VPW. I started watching. It wasn't like I didn't want to reach out to them until I was like a little bit more, more matches in. Until I had more matches in, because I didn't want to like make a fool out of myself.
I get it.
And I reached out to VPW, and it was like months in the making. Like we were deciding date or whatever, and then it happened. First match I had was against Valentina Vasquez. And I'm going to joke about this. Every time I have like a match with somebody, the next time they drop the title, I weaken them. Like, think about it. I wrestled Valentina. Next show, she lost the championship to Tatiana. I wrestled Clara back in it was like the one of the last shows at Invictus. And she dropped the title to Kaya this show. I'm weakening them.
Hey, at some point somebody will weaken a champion, and then you'll
And
come
then
right
I'll win it.
and then you'll be like, "Thank you for that. I'll take
Thank you for
that."
the
And
hard
then,
work.
but so you mentioned, Invictus as well. Have you noticed a difference? Because, like I said, you wrestled a lot in you did some stuff in Miami. You were born and raised in Puerto Rico. Have you noticed a difference with the crowd in New York? Because I've heard stories that the New York crowd is probably one of the toughest crowds.
It's very regional as well. I'll go to the Bronx. I bring out my flag. You know how that's gonna go. Or I don't even like when I debuted for We Are Wrestling. I said when they said Puerto Rico, that was the first match I've ever had in New York. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't as known. I don't think I'm as known still, but like I was, less recognizable in a sense. And it's a thing. And another thing that I've noticed is like you'll find Puerto Ricans anywhere because never in my life I thought that I'd find a Puerto Rican at BPW. And that happened. They said from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I listened, Boricua, back in the audience, and I'm like, oh my god, there's a Puerto Rican in Long Island. I was so excited.
Yeah. Well, especially you mentioned the Bronx. You can't walk 5 minutes without running into somebody who they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Puerto Rico." "Oh,
same." They're like, same.
It's the funniest thing. But so you've done the stuff with VPW. Obviously, you've done the stuff with Invictus. In your career so far, who do you think would be your toughest opponent? Your toughest, let me rephrase that. Who is your? Well, actually, two-part question. Your greatest rival or your toughest opponent?
I have a tie between when I wrestled for. Okay, so toughest opponent I can classify, but I can tell you 3 people easily.
That's
toughest opponent in the sense of me feeling small was Ali Catch. I had the opportunity and the honor to wrestle Ali at Wrestling Open back in March. A match I did not expect, and I always said I didn't deserve. I'll cry like while talking about it. It was one of like toughest matches to date because I felt like I had something to prove. Toughest opponent in the sense of a match, I'd say in Honor Among Wrestling back in April. They're located in Iowa. I had my first no disqualification match against Su Young. Again, a match I've never done in my life. I never thought I'd do. I'd be the kind of girl I'm a scaredy girl. I'm a scaredy cat sometimes, and I'll say I'm too pretty for this, and that's a lie. I realize that's a lie. I'm not above it. I love it. I loved it. Like the adrenaline rush. I didn't think I was gonna be able to pull through. We were the main event of that show, and again, the adrenaline was there. It was a tough match because again, Su Young is also a very, very known name, and she has a great career. And again, me just like, hi, I'm just this Puerto Riqueña that just popped in the equation, and she's just making random appearances in the States. And then you have someone as established as Su Young and Ali, and I can't help but to feel small, but also accomplished in the sense that companies would trust me with such a challenge, And if I had to say, like, storyline wise, the bane of my existence is Sammy Chaos. Sammy was my initiation for We Are Wrestling, and back at the Deja Vu show. Sammy Chaos was literally the person that got in the way when I wrestled at Kaiju Pro Wrestling when Tiffany was not able to compete on that show. That was the only time I could get back at her. And also, Sammy Chaos was the one who eliminated me at the Survival of the Fittest match at Battle Club Pro. So it's a story right there. It keeps going, and she's the bane of my existence. And I know, and I know that she knows that I know.
But and obviously, those all three of them that you mentioned are all well-known people, especially Alley Cat and Sue Young. I mean, you've seen them on national TV. So the fact that you can sit there and say, "No, I was in the ring with them and I went toe to toe with them," it's not something to sell yourself short on, I would have to say. But I want to look ahead now because you have a big match coming up. I don't remember the date for Bell to Bells.
Yes, I do.
And actually, it's going to be the next guest who I have on the next ATR exclusive, Vicious Vicky. So, how do you feel going into this match, knowing that you're going up against a fan favorite and one of the biggest names when it comes to women's wrestling in New Jersey?
I feel like challenges to me have become a thing now, and breaking the odds. I know it sounds kind of a cliche. I've always considered myself an underdog. I am the underdog in a way. I'm the one that's coming all the way from Puerto Rico to wrestle someone that has so many, she has so much experience. She's wrestled some of the very best. But since I have something to prove, I'm not gonna back out of this match because I'm not like other girls. I'm much, much worse when it comes to wrestling and when I have something to prove. So, Vicious Vicky, she might be the vicious one, but I'm about to teach her who la chica de Lola Ola is.
Yeah, if I learned anything in my 31 years, you don't want to piss off a woman from Puerto Rico.
No, you don't.
You don't.
And I don't think I respect Vicky. I respect Vicious Vicky. I've seen her grow as a wrestler. I've seen a lot of her stuff. Again, she's been out longer than I have. So again, an honor to be put in a match against her. I've been watching her stuff for the longest time. But I know the best way I can make a great impression is by defeating some of the very best. So I'm not planning to go easy on someone I respect.
No, I believe me. I think for any wrestler, the biggest thing, and obviously I'm coming at this from a fan perspective, so it's a little bit different. If you can get yourself over with the crowd, that is a big part of it. And I've seen you wrestle before, and you definitely have gotten yourself over, especially with the New York, New Jersey crowd. And the comment that's always said is, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
New York is a fun but tough crowd, and I love them. I love them. I can't be mad at them. Even in Staten Island, again, I thought I wasn't gonna see a Puerto Rican from San Juan, Puerto Rico, another Puerto Rican, and I'm like, what? So it's nice. I guess I'm in representation of those people that don't see people like them these days. So it's a very cool feeling, and hopefully there's people from Puerto Rico there, but hopefully I get behind locals that are born and raised from New Jersey, and they get to know a little bit of La Chica de Lola Ola or El Culo Talentoso when I call myself when I'm mad.
Or as I've learned, translation, Puerto Rican woman mad, run.
Run.
Just run. But there isn't, one more topic I want to get to before we wrap up. And I talked to you about, I was mentioning this to you before we started recording. And it's the whole situation that happened with Sky Blue at the most recent Ring of Honor tapings. And I'm figuring, and again, I'm trying to tread lightly on how I ask this question.
Fine.
Because when you're in the ring and you hear the crowd chanting, and you have that one douche, one person, let me call that, who decides to start making some vulgar comments. Do you hear those comments? And if you do, do they affect your mindset in the match, or is it something where it's like, okay, you don't even notice it, and then all of a sudden somebody says to you afterwards, by the way, so and so was making comments?
So I thought like when I started I used to wrestle with like long pants. Then I transitioned as the way I was evolving as a character. I didn't. I thought like before I was out the first time of the ring, like for a match, I thought to myself, maybe I won't listen to these people, but I'd be lying to myself if I said I didn't. I can hear them loud and clear. It's like there's a lot of ruckus, but that particular voice, like that person, it does kind of affect you and get to you. I've learned to be. I say a word. I don't know if I'm allowed to say bad words here,
You are.
so I'm just gonna say it in Spanish, so it's easier. I've always say that I'm injodible. You can't fuck with me. Like there's nothing you can say about me that's gonna like destroy my day. Like, oh, you want to talk about my gear? I'll make fun of myself. You want to talk about my fishnets that they got busted? I'll put the picture online. You want to talk about my butt? Sure, go at it. I'll beat you to it. There was a show I had. It was really weird. I had a couple. The woman was calling me
Okay.
every
I get it.
vulgar thing in the well her husband was cheering for me. It was so weird. I had this woman calling me and everything, and I could hear them like it's a lot of ruckus, and I could still hear her calling me every slur she could think of, and I could hear him doing, and it was like, what is this? And like, you know what? I'm a fun character. I learned, at least to me, the way I deal with things. I not only do I make fun of myself, I do tend to clap back. I was like, since it was a couple, I was like, "This is your husband's Valentine's Day gift," and that just got her angrier. But she stopped. She was so mad. She stopped. They had to calm her down. I learned people don't like a taste of their own medicine, but more importantly, what was happening to Sky Blue, a lot of us feel it every day. Like, yeah, that time I was a woman. I've had people say very vulgar things about me, and that's not okay. Like, and the fact that they always blame it on what I was wearing, when my male colleagues are literally shirtless and with trunks all the time, and I'm like the shameless hypocrisy of all of this. So I feel like everyone should be able to wear whatever they want to wrestle, because what we wear is a representation of who we are. And if we wear more or less, that's just not going to make us lesser of a person or more. And also more ass in wrestling, because fuck you, that's why.
Hey, I mean, I've said it before. I'm a huge fan, and when I look at women's wrestling, I don't look at it as, oh, they're wearing no. I look at it as, okay, can they walk into a ring and put on put on a match, and that's what I look at as. Maybe I'm different in that perspective, that I look.
But you can do both. Like regardless, you can appreciate how a person looks, well, you can also appreciate their wrestling. You don't like, I don't think you need to put down the other to make a point. These women look great. I wish I looked like half of these women look every day for sure. But I also appreciate their craft in the ring, and I don't I love like the fact that they're able to prove that they can do both, you know? Like they're just not stuck to like one standard. And I feel that's amazing in women's wrestling these days.
Oh no, I absolutely agree. And now here, obviously, I think we just hit the tip of the surface. There's so much more I want to get into with you,
You're fine.
but no, but unfortunately, we have to kind of wrap up here because I have
I
your
know, you got my opponent.
coming up soon. But I do want to thank you. The door's always open for you to come back on. And like I said, it was a blast having you on. I am gonna make a promise. By the end of this year, I will be at a VPW show.
You better be no, not any show. You have to be in. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a straight exclusive right now. You better be in the August show because I will be there in August.
You know what? You got yourself a deal. I will be there in August.
August 10. That's the show I'm at.
I will be there for that one because everybody keeps saying about VPW, and I'm like, oh, they're like radio.
So wait, 15 minutes, whatever, and then you go to 4 hours to Albany. Which again, no shade. I love Dynasty, so I get why you do it.
But it's like I said, I definitely want to get to a VPW show. Not only that, I kind of know the ring announcer for VPW, so it kind of also helps a little bit. But I don't want to say anything. I just want to kind of walk in and be like, "Hi guys."
Hi. You should totally do that. Just nonchalant, and they're like, "What?"
Well, I know the joke's gonna be. Knowing radio and knowing the ring announcer of VPW, the joke is gonna be, John, what are you doing here? This isn't upstate New York.
I feel like I don't know if you met Kane Industries manager.
No, I haven't yet.
Silk is everything. You're gonna love Silk as well.
Like I said, I will definitely be at the show that you're going to be at because I want to finally get my butt to a VPW show. But now here, where can the fans connect with you on social media, and what else do you have coming up that you like to promote?
Okay, so social media, you can find me on my Facebook fan page. This language barrier is horrible. Facebook fan page as Nahir Robles. My X and Instagram have both the same handle. I'm going to spell it out because it's in Spanish. I should change that eventually. It's RIZOSYSARCASMOS. In Spanish, it's Rizos y Sarcasmos. In English, it actually means curls and sarcasm. So it's kind of like a catchy name. It's a really good one.
It'll be. I'll do you one better. If anybody wants to follow Nahir, you definitely should. Her social media accounts will be in the description below.
Yay! It's easier. Also, I know this is the last thing I'm gonna say. 50th match happened this past weekend, and this was my first title, Warrior Breed Wrestling Women's Championship, and I'm very glad to be able to represent Warrior Breed Company, and very excited to make a lot of title defenses for them.
Congratulations on all your success. Like I said, the door is always open for you to come back on here.
Oh, you do not know what you just did to yourself.
I've said that for a few people, and the joke I say is, I'm not even going to open the door a crack. No, it's just going to be, honestly, I'm just going to take the door off.
We're just going to kick it out. Yeah.
But Nahir, thank you so much for hopping on. I appreciate it a lot. Guys, for Nahir Robles, I'm John. This has been an ATR exclusive. We'll catch you guys next time right here on the Around the Ropes podcast.